Hello, hello. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talking Jit. In today's episode, I brought on my buddy Big Dan. Big Dan has a very interesting story, uh, going from thinking he's spending the rest of his life in prison to creating his own foundation to help prisoners, homeless. Um, it's just an amazing kind of turnaround story. We get into some of his prison stories, so might be a little bit intense for some listeners, but nonetheless, very interesting. And if you notice through this episode, we go from what kind of put him in to prison all the way through his journey to turning into a pastor and turning his life around, creating a family. And, I'll leave the rest to you. Enjoy. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Talking Jit with Acai. On today's episode, we've got a very intense story, but with a very good message behind it. I have none other than the blog master herself, Tara Jacobson, and she just so happens to kind of sort of, but just say future mother-in-law. Can we say that? Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
When everyone's done bugging me about it, maybe it'll
Put a
happen.
ring on it.
I know. I'm just one of the people that the more I get bugged about it, the more it just goes on the back burner. I'm like, it puts that irritating feeling under my skin. So maybe if I get some silence on that whole subject, it'll happen.
I'm married to that guy too. They do say you marry your father.
um so all right, hopefully this is it.
Take 103.
No, for real. We both learned a lot today.
Yeah.
And now I completely forgot what we were talking about. Oh man, should we start over?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So basically, this is our 130th try.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start from the beginning, which wasn't too far into it. It was only like 5 minutes. But you start off by basically saying that I asked you, what got you in a situation to go to prison.
Yeah.
And I'll just start over from there.
So, like I said, grew up in a decent home. Just started getting into because we lived in at the time High Point, and in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't a great neighborhood. It was basically like Cracktown, raids every other night, and lots of gang activity. So I got involved with that. Just started getting in trouble and doing drugs and drinking and being a hardhead. And ended up on the streets, living on the streets at 15, and basically just bouncing from house to house with my friends, and for about a year, and was forced by the state to go back to my parents' house. And, I was still butting heads with my stepdad at the time, and, ended up going to a jail diversion youthful offender program, and, was still getting in trouble there. And I got into a fight and, ended up leaving that program, which basically activated because I had like a 7-year suspended sentence for Department of Corrections. So I already knew that I was going to prison. So I just like wilded out as soon as I left, and was with some other guys that also were on their way to prison. So we ended up catching an armed carjacking charge and some other charges, and scored out to prison time. So when I went to court, they were offering life and then 30, after that for a few times, and then finally worked my way up to a deal for 10 years in prison without probation or anything.
Which does that pretty much mean just like 10 years, no questions asked?
Correct.
Like there's no good behavior or anything like that?
So yeah, there would have been, yeah, if it's 85%, so you can get like 15% knocked off if you're good. Which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I was not good in prison, so
Yeah. So when you the story you're just telling me about before we got cut off, I don't know why, it's just a crazy story to me. Well, actually, first of all, when you're talking about High Point, you're talking about High Point here, like in our area?
yeah.
I'm familiar with that area. I'm familiar with them a little bit. Okay. Wow.
There's a lot of different neighborhood now.
Yeah, but I remember back even when I was younger, parts of High Point and certain people from High Point, and had a few run-ins with people from that area as well. Not necessarily in High Point, but over on this side. Basically, I'm familiar with somewhat of the neighborhood. I'm sure, I know it's not what it used, or it's better than it used to be.
Yeah.
Still not perfect for sure. So the fight you got in, was it just a normal fight, or was it the one that you're talking about? The one with the duck walks and stuff?
Oh, that one was that was after. Yeah.
So that's like when you were talking about the gladiator camp?
Yeah, so when I went to the YO camp or JIT camp or youthful offender camp, whatever you want to call it, it's 25 and under. So I went to that first when we talked about how you feel when you get off the bus. You're basically just dehumanized. They strip you down in front of everybody, with like 30 to 50 other guys there, just stripping down, yelling at you, and then shaving your head, doing all that fun stuff, and giving you a
Making you hold
department
your balls?
number and all that.
You said something about they make you lift your balls or whatever
Yeah.
in front of everyone.
So yeah, they basically strip you down, make you lift your balls in front of everybody, and then bend over, cough, spread your cheeks, all that fun stuff.
And then yeah, see, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get caught up. For those listening, we went through some technical difficulties that we just got through, so my brain is now finally back to fun mode. So we're kind of like, I'm just kind of reprocessing everything we went through. And then you went in, and then I guess we'll just get into the duck walk story, and then we'll go from there. So how did that all happen? They were on your ass, or they thought they were funny, or it was just a bunch of guards that tried to keep you intimidated, right?
So first we go back. So the YO camps are at the time were ran like boot camps. So for everything that you do out of place, like that's wrong according to that officer, then you got to do push-ups, duck walk, squats. It's all boot camp based. So they have like a bunch of guys that are like ex-military drill sergeants and stuff like that that were running the camps at the time. So we were used to doing a million push-ups a day, just because we're constantly getting in trouble and everything. So when he asked me to do the duck walks, I already knew that I could do a ton of them, so I just did it around the dorm a bunch and was smiling about it, and talking crap back to him, and thought it was just going to be left at that. But I guess his pride got hurt, and he said he was going to slap me upside my head while I was sleeping, and I didn't believe him, and so I went to bed that night, which coincidentally actually happened to be my birthday at the time. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh shit.
So yeah, he slapped me upside my head while I was sleeping, and I got up and pretty much knocked him out the first like 2 seconds, and then just started kicking and beating him, and then grabbed his radio and called for his response team. Told him that they had an officer down, and told him what I did, and so the response team got there, and I ended up fighting with them. And they ended up wrestling me down, and I had one guy like that was like trying to pin my legs down. One guy was like had my arm behind my head, just trying to like break my arm, and another guy was like stomping on the back of my neck, trying to break my neck. And that adrenaline rush starts kicking in, and I just like ended up doing like a one-arm push-up and started getting back up. And the sergeant got scared, and he was like, "Hey, listen, if you just cuff up right now, like it's over, it's done. We'll take you to the cell, and it's over." So I was like, "All right, whatever, let's go," because I just wanted, obviously, to be done. I've been fighting them for a while, so I cuffed up, and of course they gassed me a bunch of times, but they were known at that time. The officers at that time were known for beating inmates down in the confinement cells, and they had just like killed an inmate like the day before in the confinement cells. So
Oh wow.
yeah.
Actually,
So
like killed him, like
yeah,
beating him to death.
yeah,
And what happens to the officers? It's justified.
yeah. Nothing happened. And back then, it was like North Florida. You couldn't do any wrong if you were an officer in North Florida at the time. So they got away with murder half the time.
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think they're like that? Do you think it's like a complex or like a they finally have power that they've never had type of deal, or are they just
Right.
stressed? Or stressful
I feel like
position, or what?
a lot of the officers at that time had like bully complex, and they
Right.
found enjoyment in being able to like talk down to inmates, and you could just see it just like gave them pleasure. There was a lot of people in there, and not all of them were, and I'll say this, uh, I was being protected without even knowing. So I told you like they had killed an inmate the night before, but
Mhm.
that night there was this Christian officer who, when I came into confinement, he was a little short guy. He stood in front of my cell and told the rest of the officers to back off, and that they weren't going to be coming in there until to touch me, and told them that he was putting in for emergency transfer.
Oh shit.
So that's how I ended up transferring out. Basically, that like it was like early morning, to an adult camp. So I went to CM camp, which is closed management, which is solitary confinement, basically for a long term.
Oh, and this is like, how long were you in there for?
3 years.
So they don't put you in general population, obviously, right?
Correct.
So how much of a difference is that? Like that little piece of like socialization taken away from you. Does it start like to wear on you? What's like?
Like the long term people that end up being in confinement for a long time they're messed up in the head. Like it does get to you. And for some people, they end up like trying to commit suicide. It just depends how strong willed you are
Right.
mentally. For myself, I just found like things to do. I read books like nonstop, and then I didn't smoke cigarettes, so I would actually like buy like packs of cigarettes and just roll them up and sell them for like stamps and other like food and stuff. So I just stayed busy back there. stayed out of trouble. I knew what to do to stay away from the guards, and uh, there was sometimes
Do
it was crazy. There were guards that used us as like to like fight against each other, and um, other guards would try to get like other inmates to like set up other inmates, or just like be like, if they didn't like an inmate, they would move another inmate into that cell just because they knew they would get beat up.
Oh shit. And so like I'm sure you get bored, right? Like the boredom, is that like the worst part of solitary, or
Yeah, I
is it?
mean, you have a lot of like just like deep thoughts or conversations with yourself. You're sitting there just, and I think that's where I started to make the change. Because I was just like straight up wild all the way up to that point. And then I
Uh,
saw that if
oh, go ahead.
if I don't change, then I'm going to be stuck in solitary confinement. For who knows how long. Because I was already facing outside charges, so that during that time when I went, I knew that I was getting additional time, so I knew I had that above my head. Plus, you could, if you are not good back there, then you could stay back there like indefinitely.
Oh fuck. I can only imagine. So, and it's so weird. How much extra time did you get for that? For that fight with the guard?
So I ended up getting an additional like 3 years, but it ran concurrent with my sentence. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's just weird
it's
how
great.
easy they throw years around. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That concept to me is always like crazy. It's like if you do something, someone can just say like, okay, there's a year of your life, a whole year
yep,
gone. You know what I mean? Just like chipping away at your lifetime. It's
yeah,
just a weird concept to me. I'm like, how can you sit there, like you get into a fight with a guard, and you got a bunch of them stomping on you and twisting your arm and shit, and then someone can just sit there and be like, okay, well, that's worth about 3 years of your life.
yeah.
You know, it's like such a weird concept. Like, and how do you scale that? Like,
How do you give
okay,
value to your years?
yeah, exactly. Like, like you're just pissed, and in the moment you're just emotional because he's like against your team, or I don't know. Like that's just like I feel like a lot of times when I hear about this stuff, I know it has to be drastic to get the point sunk across, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I mean, taking like years off someone's life should be kind of considered serious, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well,
And
it's crazy. What's crazy to think about too is so that guard, come to find out, when I ended up going to the county jail for those outside charges, that guard was like hated by the whole like town. So when I was going to go to the county jail, I thought I was going to get messed with because I had battery on a Leo, charges, and they like asked me. They were like, "Oh, you're the inmate that beat up officer such and such." I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, good for him." Like, happy to see me.
you became a celebrity.
Yeah.
Um, I was listening to like this PBD podcast. I don't know if you know Patrick Bet David, but
No.
he just interviewed Suge Knight from jail. Like they did like a jail phone call interview, and obviously it was probably a bunch of phone calls to make the one conversation.
Right.
But there's something he kind of subtly like Suge kind of subtly dropped in there, was like he's like, sorry, I'm probably talking a lot because I don't have anyone to talk to in here except for this AI thing in my cell. And it made me think, I'm like, they're starting to put like, or certain cells or certain places have like an AI you can talk to now.
That's crazy.
But, right. So do you think you would be talking to that thing? Do you think like, if you're in solitary, you'd be like, I need something to talk to and this is as good as it gets? Kind of like Wilson from Castaway, or do you think that's like something you wouldn't mess with?
I don't know. That could get down. That could go down like a deep rabbit hole, because then you like start thinking that person's real, or that AI is like a real person. You know?
Dude, you
'Cause,
could like almost like brainwash with it, right?
yeah. So I don't know. I'd be paranoid of it. In this present moment in my mindset, I would probably be paranoid of it. But I don't know. Put me in the cell back when I was young, I might have used it. Who knows?
It's like such a weird concept because it's like I just start thinking about it. I'm like, man, you're in there bored as shit. You're probably in a dark state of mind. You got nothing going on. Like anything sounds good to you, and then you got this random like non-real robot that talks to you, kind of like the Snapchat AI. And then like you said, like you probably start convincing yourself it's real. You probably start getting emotionally invested in it.
Right.
And then I'm learning AI right now. I'm taking courses on it, and the way they program it, bro, they could definitely program that shit to like have certain responses and certain routes to take you. And I'm sure if your
Right.
mindset that broken down, it'd be pretty easy.
Well, think about like, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix like document, what was it, Social Dilemma, where it talks about how we're manipulated by social media to produce a certain response to kind of get what they want from us, to make certain things happen, whether it be in the government or, whatnot.
Oh,
But like, same thing could happen with AI. Like, they could program it to basically produce a certain response out of you, and like you said, brainwash you. So like, I, I don't know.
gosh,
I
it
wouldn't
goes
want
so
to go down that rabbit hole.
because then the AI would start learning that it's successful, and then it keep getting better and better and better at it, quicker and quicker and quicker.
They're almost
I don't-
utilizing it as a shrink.
yeah. Meanwhile, this guy just wants some sort of like dopamine hit out of it, like he's talking to an actual human. But really, it's like I don't know. He just subtly mentioned that, and like that was it. Just like it was just a quick little thing he said. But then I started thinking down that rabbit hole about it. And now talking to you, I'm like, man, I don't know. I think most people would use it, and that's scary. And then coming out of what'd you say?
We just had books. Like, I just read a lot of books.
Like good books? Like
Pretty
I
much
mean,
anything that they would slide under my door, whether it was like novels, educational books. I just absorbed everything I could. Took like courses and stuff like that too.
so do you think that like being put in that position, because you already kind of touched on and said that like you think it kind of started convincing you to do better. Do you think that that was kind of like a blessing? Or do you think you would have turned around your life anyway?
I definitely think it was a blessing at the time. It gave me some time to mature. If you would have stuck me straight on an adult compound, I don't know what I would have done. I was that wild. But being that I did, the 3 years in solitary and then got out into general population, like I've said it before to you, it was like when I first was released after all that, I just like looked around and looked how like people were like normal, and I thought to myself, I'm not normal. And I like started to like walk backwards, like something's not right here. So now I need to really like think about like how do I normalize myself here now.
Did your instinct tell you to go back in the cell or go back to solitary?
Almost, yeah. It's like I was
Because
like wanting to like go back in the hole, like, oh, like this isn't normal. I don't feel right here.
like back to your comfort zone. It's
Yeah.
almost like even though it was like stressful and probably slightly traumatic, it's like your comfort zone now.
Yeah.
You go and see people happy, and you're like, I could only imagine that stepping out. And I think that's how you said it to me. You're like, I knew I was fucked up when I walked out. It's all that. What was that process like? Like, how did you normalize? Did you like socialize? Did you keep to yourself? Is that like not a place where you socialize?
So what's crazy is they sent me to Dade CI when I got out, and Miami at the time was just, it was open doors, wild, anything goes. Um, like if you had the money, you could buy anything you wanted there. It was crazy. It was also one of the more violent camps at the time. Uh, so violence, I was no uh, stranger to, so that kind of like normalized things for me. Uh, Unfortunately, so I still was trying to better myself, but at the same time, still wild. If that makes sense, just because violence was normal there, so that made it a little normal for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of see like both sides. Like it's your comfort zone, but you're still. It's like you have a lot of big corrections to make in your
Right.
psyche. I'm guessing, and like someone just told me recently, like if it's like small, easy corrections, it's more like steering a bike. Like it's easy to make little cuts and swerves. But when you
Right.
got like a whole big mess, it's like more like steering a ship or a boat where it takes like a lot of momentum to move, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably having to go in your comfort zone to figure out which steps to fix one at a time. I'm
Right.
guessing.
So like
Oh,
it was just little
go.
things. I signed up for different programs in there just to get out my cell, and then I figured out kind of like the hustle or the game, uh, and I figured out like basically just the way I carried myself got me into a lot of places, which uh, got me a lot of power, which then I became like addicted to. So I just kind of like wanted more and more power, and stayed there a long time, and ended up uh, pretty much basically me and my homeboy ended up running that prison basically.
The whole
uh,
entire thing?
yeah, so like we could go anywhere. I pe- People would be in count, like locked down in their cells, and we would be like just walking around the compound like it's normal, just doing whatever we wanted.
Sheesh. How do you work your way into that? Like, how do you climb that
uh,
ladder?
so basically I started just like doing little jobs here and there, and just getting to know like because there was a lot of female officers uh, on that compound, and I figured out my smile got me in a lot of places, and just started talking to them and kind of flirting with them, and uh, doing favors for them, and um, just joining different work crews. And I had like 10 different jobs while I was there, so I figured out if I could just like hop around from job to job throughout the day, then uh, basically I had my hands in everything that was going on in the compound.
Oh shit. I see. So translating it to like maybe comparing it to more of like a business or something, it'd be like you having a familiar person in every department.
Yeah,
So therefore you kind of have eyes in every department and a little bit of sway or persuasion in every department, right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
yeah.
What
So
kind of
like
job? Like or
like my
favors of female?
first job that got me like the most favors was I was like what they call the ice man, right? So nobody else could get ice for the officers couldn't get ice for their coolers. Um, so I had the ability to go into the kitchen and get ice whenever I wanted to. So, and that was through the private company Airmark that was at the time. So I would go in there and fill up 2 big trash bags full of ice and just walk out of there, just like out the kitchen. And I would go to each dorm and fill up the officers' coolers so that they could have like cold drinks and stuff throughout the day because the dorms were hot. So, because if I didn't stop at their dorm, then they didn't get ice. They couldn't get it.
I see what you're saying.
So like, they wanted cold drinks throughout the day. They want to keep their Cokes cold. Their Diet, a lot of them drink Diet Cokes. They wanted to keep their drinks cold. Then they had to let me in to give them ice. But at the same time, like, I'm not giving them ice unless I'm getting favors as well.
It's a little bit of a barter system we got going on here.
Yeah.
Would they give you their Diet Cokes and stuff to bring you an extra one from home?
I mean, I got food all the time, different stuff. I would make them like order like food from the outside or like food from the officers' lunches and stuff.
So what was like the craziest job they gave you, or that you had to do? Was there anything that was like, oh shit, like I gotta be careful, or?
I mean, probably the craziest one was I used to go in to the psych ward because on day they built like this like separate psych ward, and it was like all we called them bugs, but like all the craziest people on in the prison system. Basically, they're talking to air and like smearing crap all over them and just doing weird stuff, trying to cut themselves. Anything that some of them are acting, just trying to appear crazy. Some are really crazy. So, but yeah, I used to go in there and I would like pass out food trays to the people in there, and then sometimes I would do like the plumbing and stuff, and it was crazy. Like the things that they would like shove down there. They would try to shove down their whole uniforms and socks and stuff down the toilet.
Oh, and then you had to go in there and clean it or pull it all out.
Yeah.
I was expecting some sort of like crazy, like you had to smuggle in something or something a little bit more.
I've done that too, but that was like the other job was I used to go outside the gate where so on paper they messed up and they dropped my security clearance, so that it allowed me to go outside the gate. And yeah, so I started going outside the gate, started working, and then I just saw how easy it was to bring stuff in. So I started like with stuff like small stuff, just random things, cell phone stuff like that, and then started moving my way up, whether it was like from cocaine to weed or just there was a couple times we brought in large amounts of weed through the laundry system. And
damn.
Yeah.
You obviously have connections from outside, right? And then you're talking to them, setting it up.
Yeah. So like I would partner with other people in the prison and be like, all right, well, I can bring it in. You just have it dropped off,
Gotcha. So like you kind of like know who you're looking for,
right?
Or kind of know where you're looking, and you don't really have to worry about anything past that. What does like somebody get out of risking going up to the prison and dropping that shit off? like risking their freedom? What do they get out of like dropping it off to you guys, right? Because you don't really have much money to give them, right?
Well, I
Do they
mean,
just do they
we
just
make
owe OG or something?
for some people it was like they would have their like baby mamas like drop stuff off, and they would send money back to them, or like so like if I smuggled in 5 pounds of weed and we break it down, you know, you're able to make a lot of money off that. So you can
Mm,
have money wired to an account, not in prison. So like they say you wanted something from me, right? And I had it, you would send money to another account for me outside to somebody else that like was my family members. So like their
right.
family members would send money. So that's how we would just like do transactions.
Okay. I was like sitting here thinking you guys don't really have much cash or anything
I
to
don't know. Yeah.
work with. I guess why not?
There's probably a ton of prisoners that are doing better than a lot of people out here right now.
Mm. And so you could get in like 5 pounds at a time.
Yeah,
That's
easily.
pretty.
At the time, yeah.
Damn, that's pretty fucking impressive, dude. That's like that's I don't know the balls of steel on this man because I'd be like I don't know. I mean, you know the game more than I do or the system more than I do, but I'd be like, holy shit, someone has to know. This shit's got to stink. How the hell do you get all that back to your cell without anyone watching? You know what I mean? Like,
It's one is about how you present yourself, right? Because you have to be uh, solid, and you gotta not give away like that look of like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. And I've said that to like people before, like if you're going through like a border check, uh, when you leave the country or whatever, they have like signs that they look at to see if they're gonna pull you over or like tell you to go to the next staging area for a full like inspection. So like if you don't give off those signs, then you're gonna go right through. So
okay,
it's the same thing as like in prison. Like if you're confident enough to just like walk through the door and say, even though I have stuff strapped to me, or I have stuff, hidden away in the laundry cart or whatever, then um, if I'm confident enough to know that I'm going to get through there, then I'm going to get through there.
you said at one point, you thought you're just gonna spend the rest of your life in prison.
Yeah, I mean, that was just when I was young, dumb, and didn't really, when you sign 10 years of your life away, you don't really think about like, oh, what is 10 years? And so like for me that was just like, oh, I'm just going to prison, and who knows, like I might get more outside charges, and I might have to kill somebody, so if I have to kill somebody, then I might get a life sentence, so
Did you think you
but
might kill somebody to stay in or to have protection or something?
I wasn't sure when I first went, um, but once I got out of like the solitary and I was on that compound for a while, I realized that it wasn't necessary. Especially once I gained the power, I realized, you know, a lot of it had to do with how good you were with uh, just your charisma, like how you carried yourself and how well you spoke with people.
Gotcha.
It's almost like
You
it's just being a good con man, really.
Is it like possible for most people or someone to get sentenced, go in there and kind of mind their business and get out? Or is it just a matter of time where you're tied into some shit?
No, and eventually I learned that. It just it took me a while to get away from all the uh, politics and stuff like that. And you know, eventually I did end up getting put under investigation for all that stuff that I was doing, and um, I figured out that it just wasn't worth it. Especially because now, like when I got put under investigation, I only had like 6 months left,
Oh
and I was
fuck.
I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I did all these educational courses, I did everything, but I'm still doing all the stupid stuff along with it. Like, I'm not really better.
Yeah. And then like Zach was telling me about like people like in his work camp. There would be guys that have like 3 months left of their work camp and they're going home. And they
Mhm.
would fucking like try to escape, which is like an automatic 5 years.
Right.
Like they would try to run and like pop the ankle thing off of them and run. And they said that like yeah, they investigated a little bit so much, but they don't chase too much because it's only a matter of time before these people get caught or get arrested again. And then they're
Yeah.
just like, here's your 5 years,
Right.
But it's like it's crazy the amount of people that have like so little time. I feel like personally I'd be like have like a countdown in my head, like fuck, like okay, I got 6 more months, I got this much more months. I'd probably wouldn't be in the moment enough. I'd probably be like almost looking at it as like a challenge to get out of there,
Yeah.
it
But it you go through like ups and downs. So like uh the up points, I would take like courses and do things to help better myself, and then that I don't know, like the immature side of me would come out and just be like, man, forget this, and like I was working out outside the gates at one point, and I didn't have that much long to go, and I was just standing and staring at the city of Miami, basically, and just staring there. I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I could just get away right now and disappear into the city. And luckily, I had a good friend of mine. He was working. We were working together, and he looked at me, and he could tell. He looked and saw the look in my eyes, like, and he just looked at me. He's like, "No, man, it ain't worth it. Don't do it."
you're probably like I I imagine like just dangling that in front of your face, it'd be very hard to turn it down. And then so you start did you feel like you got out of there by luck, or do you think that you actually started kind of like really pushing these good decisions and pushing better, you know, do you think you navigated and got out of there on time because you were smart, or because you were like good at the system, or do you think that like you actually like made changes and started kind of going that direction?
At first, it was just because I was good at the system, um, but then um, the last little bit, I got put under investigation, and it was like, for me, I look at it like it was like the hand of God, right? He was like positioning me into the right place, because right after I got put under investigation, they put you into confinement, and until you transfer out or figure out, like, is this investigation warranted? So right after I got put under investigation, I got a letter from my mom saying that my grandmother, who I was really close with, she had just passed, and I only had 6 months left. So um, I was pretty like torn up by that, and because like her letters all through that, she was dying from like emphysema and some other stuff, and um, she kept telling me like, I'm hanging on, until you get out, and so I was like excited to see her when I got out. But when I got that letter, I was pretty destroyed. The old me, or the me at that time,
Mm-hmm.
had I been on the compound, I probably would have self-destructed and just done something wild. But because I was in confinement, I had time to process it. So once that investigation was over, they found that I had too much power on the compound at that time, so they transferred me to another compound, and basically I wrote out the rest of my sentence there, and that's when I really focused in, and I started reading the Bible and started talking to God. I was like, well, there's got to be something to this, or I gotta figure something out here. So I knew some truth, and knew that there was part of the answer there. I just hadn't received full sight yet. But it did really help me as far as see that I needed a change in my thought process, to help slow my mind down and slow my anger down. And so when I did get out, I wasn't as wild as I was.
So, and is that what inspired your, what is it, Heal Outreach? Is that all you?
Yeah, it's my wife and myself, and we have a board, and but mainly us that operate it day to day, and we have another volunteer that helps us out every day. And so Heal Outreach is originally it was helping ex-offenders acclimate and live, is what it stood for, heal. But right now we're focused on the aspects of, or the root causes of, why people would go to prison, or why people are addicted. And so we address homelessness, poverty, mental health, and we all bring it all back to on a faith-based holistic approach.
Oh, that's cool. So, do you how do you find people, or do people find you?
Well, originally, so when we first started, we started going into the prisons, which, crazy enough, I always said that I would never go back to prison. I always said that there's no way you get me back in a prison. So I always say that God has a sense of humor. And I ended up, volunteering to go back into a prison to speak to the guys in there. And I was with an organization, um, and we had about 70 volunteers, and I sat down for lunch with all those volunteers, and the CEO for that organization ended up coming up, just sat in front of me and was like, tell me about you and tell me your story. So I told him everything, and he was just like, man, you have such a ability to help people that are getting out of prison. So those words really resonated and inspired me. So that day, when it was a Saturday, we exchanged information, and I got back home and just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I sat down and I prayed. I was trying to think about what would a nonprofit organization, what would it look like for us? And so I came up with the name Heal Outreach and the acronym and everything. And initially it was, we were contacting people in prison, while we were going into the prisons. And then from there, I was praying one day, and this might sound crazy, but you hear from God, if you believe in God, and then you hear from God. But I felt like God was telling me to buy supplies and give it out to the homeless. And I was like, no, that has nothing to do with a prison ministry. And so I kept ignoring it, but then finally one day I was like, all right, I got to do it. It's what God wants from me. So I went and bought a bunch of stuff, and my wife and I, and we went out and we passed the stuff out. And what we realized is that the people that we were trying to reach in the prisons, the ones that got out and were struggling, it was like a good 70% of them were homeless. So we realized that a lot of our demographic was the homeless population. So then we had just started addressing the fact that a lot of people that have been in and out of prison are homeless.
Why do you think
So,
that is?
oh man, I mean, there's a lot to it, but a lot of people have a hard time finding jobs and places to live. Um, for me, I found it extremely hard to find a job because, um, you know, when you do a background check on me, you see battery on a Leo and armed carjacking at the top of the list.
Right.
So, who wants to hire somebody that has armed robberies and violent felonies?
Yeah.
So,
And then business owners probably also think that means you're less likely to show,
yeah. So, yeah, there's that. And, um, we found it hard. We couldn't get into any of the apartments or rental places. My wife and I found it extremely hard to get any place for our family. So we had to start lying. Back in the day, we would have to lie and just not put me on the lease. Because if we put my name on the lease, then we would automatically get denied.
Hmm.
So, like, if you're alone and you don't have any family and you burnt your bridges or whatever, and you're out there and you're trying to get a job, you can't get a job, you can't find a decent place to live because, they might deny you at the apartment complexes or whatever. So then your only other options are shelters. Well, the shelters are all full and they're battling for spots there. So you only have so many shelters in the area.
Are you on like a waiting list to get in at a shelter? Is that what it is?
It's like usually they're first come, first serve. So like you
Gotcha.
gotta be there to get in. And then like the one by us, that's here, it's like the main one for the county is the Safe Harbor. There's nothing safe about that place. It's violence and people getting robbed and their stuff all the time in there.
Like, are they all robbing each other?
Yeah.
So you see like the same people like walking around, and I know like you working at Starbucks, that Greyhound bus next door would show up and drop a bunch of them off, a bunch of homeless people off. And then you kind of see like the same faces around for like months, maybe even years. I've always wondered, I'm like, where do these people go during the nighttime or the day, or what do they like? Where do they all go? What do they do? And it's are those like probably the ones that didn't make it in the shelter or don't fight for it, or
Yeah, and some of them just find that it's just a lot easier just to stop caring anymore. So they just stay wherever they want to stay. Sleep wherever they want to sleep, whether it's behind a bush or on a bench or you know. And
so how do you guys help them?
so we provide counseling, therapy, mentoring. Um, we try to get them in, like if they have addiction problems, we'll get them into sober living facilities, and we rely on donations from our supporters, but like we'll put up like the first few weeks or even month of like the sober living for the people, we vet them, make sure that they're willing to go through everything in order, to put the work in, so because those sober living facilities are not easy. You got to go to meetings every day. You got to have a job by a certain time, and you have a curfew and everything. So it's like you got to want it if you're gonna succeed. So we'll help them out with that, and then like whatever needs physically, whether if somebody comes to me and says they're hungry, I'm gonna feed them. I never want to see any one of my brothers or sisters just going hungry. So food, clothing, necessities like toilet paper, whatever. We go out every month and we pass out supplies to the homeless. So we get like drawstring bags and we fill them up with necessary hygiene products, and for the women we get the feminine hygiene products and stuff them in the bags, and then we give them a bunch of snacks and like a meal to go with it, and some water.
So, and some people's outlook on that is doing that is kind of giving them incentive to be homeless and stuff. And other people's outlook is like doing that is these are humans too, and they're just in a bad place. And what
Yeah.
what do you how do you see that? Do you see that as like fixing a problem? Do you see it as like that's just what has to be done? What's your outlook?
Well, I used to think that just kind of like perpetuates the problem, but
Right.
my conversion, thinking and looking to God for answers, and the Bible tells us to feed the hungry and to treat them as brothers and sisters. So for me, like, that's how I look at them. They're the brothers and sisters. So it tells us to get into the trenches and get our hands dirty with them. So that's how I look at it. Like, for just say, if you have a message that you want to deliver to somebody, imagine you being hungry and haven't eaten for a day, 2 days, whatever. Are you going to listen to that message that I have for you if you're hungry? Or would you listen to that message better if I give you a meal, feed you, and show you love first?
Right. Okay.
So that's how I look at it. Like, we try to build relationships with people. So we see these people on a constant basis. We try to build a relationship with them and then, mentor them. And so, like, I've had one guy come in to the church, he was homeless, wearing a backpack. And you could just smell the alcohol all over him. And, he came in, he was obviously struggling with something. He was just crying. And he said he was done. He was done fighting everything, and he wanted something different. And, we helped him out as much as we could. Like, we gave him those options, and he took them, and he did well for a while. And, addiction's a tough thing. It's not going to go perfect every time. And we have to realize that sometimes it takes a few times to really get them to understand, or even to see a change within themselves.
Gotcha.
So
It's probably a slow process too.
Yeah.
Like a slow, patient process.
I mean, he relapsed a couple times, and then just this last time, he's going on a year sober now. He's got his own place, and he's doing well and he's engaged, and so
Oh
it's
wow.
good to see him doing good.
So it's almost like you have to keep trying and just let the numbers play out.
Right. It's like the law of sales, right? Like you go,
Yeah.
you're not going to get a yes every time. You got to be okay with the no's. So, sometimes you have failures, but the more times that we try to help people, the more times that we're going to have a success rate.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of objections to overcome, but you
Yep.
know, the more you keep fishing, or the more not fishing, but the more you keep trying, maybe the better ways you learn to beat it.
Oh,
Or
you had
help.
it right. I'm fishing for just like that Jesus said.
Yeah. Damn, it's crazy. What a transformation, dude. What a from one mindset to another. Being in that lifestyle and angry to like now you're out helping people, you're going back to prison voluntarily. I do have one more question at least. You said God spoke to you. What does that sound like? What is that like?
For me, like, it was just, it's kind of hard to explain. It's not like an
A voice?
audible voice. It's like it's that voice within you. That
Mm.
for me it was like a peaceful voice. And sometimes that peaceful voice asks me to do some crazy things, but I know that when he tells me to do it and I have peace about it, and even though it's completely against what like the world thinks that I should do or whatever, like for example, us as a family, you know, not working anymore and not working for Starbucks. Like I was making good money, as a store manager trainer for Starbucks, and my wife was making good money doing what she does, and we sold everything and moved to Mexico for a while, and started helping people down there, as missionaries. So like that voice, it asks you to step out your comfort zone and and to love people and share, that love.
Right. So now, how do you support yourself off of doing that? Like,
For us, so like we try to find like side hustles, it's side jobs to do things, and
so you
the
still gotta
ministry,
find your way.
the nonprofit takes care of itself. We get supporters and donors, but um, I've also had a lot of support from like my mom that has helped us and believed in everything that we're doing, and but yeah, I'll pick up jobs here and there, just to like side jobs, side hustles, or sell things. My dad left me a lot of stuff to sell, so like we support
Damn,
ourselves.
gotcha. So yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. You still gotta find a way to um make ends meet while you're doing all this.
Right.
Even more shows how much you want.
Yeah, we're willing to give up everything for it because it ultimately is, if you believe what we believe, this stuff all ends at some point. Like the cars, the money, all that. Just I can't take it with me. So
Right.
what is it really? Even if I have it here, it doesn't bring me happiness, and that's what I found when I was working. Was I didn't have happiness from that, and I didn't have joy, but I found more joy in leaving that system and being able to help other people than being stuck in a system of giving my years away to a corporation.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I'm kind of in the same mindset right now. A lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. People like that and people love the comfort of it, but it's I think it's cool when people are able to mentally accept like a different purpose. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We're kind of trained to like do a 9 to 5, try to find the highest paying 9 to 5, even if it's something you don't like doing or you despise doing. At least you're getting paid. But like
Right.
you're giving up so much time of your day and your breathing, waking hours that like, you know, a system wouldn't work if everyone thought this way because then nobody would do the hard shit. But I like it when I see people that actually like you said, you're willing to give it all up to go help other people and you feel good about it, you know?
Yep.
And for the people listening, you have 2 kids and a family and everything.
Yes.
And jiu-jitsu, bro. You can't just leave jiu-jitsu behind.
I'm trying to work that into it
Yeah. Are you
eventually.
gonna start bringing them to the gym?
So the ultimate goal is we're talking about in Mexico. We saw a huge like turnout because we did a little jiu-jitsu seminar for the
Mhm.
youth there, and there was like 350 teenagers that showed up.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, so like they're hungry down there, and so the ultimate goal is we have a 3-year plan to build a youth center down there, and I'd like to um, incorporate jujitsu into the ministry that we're doing down there, and we're gonna call it Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. So we get volunteers or people just to come down there and help like train the youth down there. You know.
That's cool. I'll put you in touch with my buddy Kyle. I met him through the gym. Uh Shout out to Kyle. He does like this jiu-jitsu and Jesus tour. That's how I met him. Is he
Or
like came down to Clearwater and he does seminars and then he does like um drawing a blank. I'm not very religious, but he does like whatever at the church.
yeah.
What do you call I feel like an idiot right now. But anyway, he goes on tours and does that. He might be someone to be a good contact with you and kind
Cool.
of spitball ideas with.
And
But
ultimately, it you don't even have to like for us like when we want to bring people down for jujitsu. It's like we don't even care if you profess your faith in God or whatever. It's just because you can come down there and still show them, jujitsu, and because even in jujitsu, it's like it's a brotherhood, So like
right,
you just show that love. Um, it's just down there, they're really lacking any form of love. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
I appreciate you doing this, man. I appreciate your time and thanks for
sure.
pushing through all the sound checks and the 100 times we had to restart it.
Well, hopefully it comes out good for you.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. If not, then we'll just re-record it again. Are you gonna be at the gym tomorrow?
Tomorrow is my 13-year anniversary with my wife, so
So
we're
she's
gonna
coming. Just kidding. Cool. Bring her along.
So she loves it, but her knees do not.
Yeah, she's super cool. You get to train, she gets to clean. You guys both get mat time.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I'll catch you sometime this week.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. See you.
I think the podcast is fucking sick. If you're listening to it and you're like, I don't know if I want to listen to the next episode of this podcast, you're probably a bitch ass. You need to listen to the next episode of this podcast and keep listening to it. Because my friends down here are trying to make shit happen. And we're
That's
going to make some shit happen.